Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Let's leave the noise of the day behind us, set aside all the little worries, and sink into a calm and gentle story. This is your time to rest, to let your thoughts drift, and to simply listen. Tonight, we'll step into one of the most famous tales of old, the story of the Trojan Horse. But not through the eyes of warriors or kings. Instead, we'll see it through the eyes of a child, nameless in the scrolls of history, but still alive in imagination. A child who watched as the great wooden horse rolled into the city of Troy, not knowing what secrets it held inside.
I was only a child when the great horse came. The morning had been quiet, the air warm with the scent of dust and flowers. From the walls of Troy, we could see the sea glittering in the distance, but the ships of the Greeks were gone. My father said it was a miracle. My mother whispered that perhaps the gods had finally tired of war. But all I saw was the horse. It stood tall outside the city gates, higher than any house I had ever known, its head nearly brushing the sky. Its wooden sides gleamed like polished amber, and its legs were thick as towers. To me, it was not a gift of peace, as the elders said, nor a trick, as some feared. To me, it looked alive. Its shadow stretched across the ground like the body of a beast, waiting to wake. The people of Troy crowded around it, their voices filling the air. Some shouted in celebration, calling it a tribute from the defeated Greeks. Others frowned, wary, their hands tight on their spears. I clung to my mother's robe, my small fingers twisting in the fabric, while my eyes stayed fixed on the horse. It seemed to breathe, or perhaps it was only the wind slipping through the cracks in its body. Still, I thought I heard something, a low creak, a faint shifting. My heart beat quickly, and I whispered, "Mother, does it move?" She hushed me with a smile, brushing a hand over my hair. "No, little one, it's only wood, nothing more." Yet I could not believe her. Even as the gates of Troy opened and the horse was dragged inside, even as flowers were laid at its feet and songs of triumph rose in the streets, I kept watching. The eyes of the horse, dark, hollow, empty, seemed to follow me wherever I went. That night, as the city danced in celebration, I lay awake. The music faded, the laughter dimmed, but I still heard the sound, that faint, steady creaking, as if something inside the horse was waiting.
That night, the city of Troy glittered with torches. Music drifted from the great square, and the air was thick with the smell of roasted meat and spilled wine. The war was over, they said. The Greeks were gone. For the first time in years, the city dared to laugh. But I could not laugh. I lay beside my mother in our small room, staring at the ceiling beams. Sleep would not come. My ears caught every sound, The echo of drums, the thud of dancing feet, the clink of cups lifted in celebration, and beneath it all, something else, a creak. At first it was faint, like wood bending in the wind. I told myself it was nothing, but it came again, slower this time and heavier. My chest tightened. I slipped quietly from my mat and padded barefoot across the floor, careful not to wake my mother. The streets were alive with joy. Men stumbled past, laughing, women sang as they poured more wine, and children darted about with wild eyes, mimicking the battles their parents no longer had to fight. I slipped through them unnoticed, moving toward the square where the horse now stood. It was even larger at night, its shadow stretching over the houses like a watchful giant. The torches made its wooden surface gleam, but the hollows of its eyes looked darker, deeper. I pressed closer, my heart pounding in my small chest, and then I heard it clearly, a whisper. I froze. The sound came from inside the horse, muffled but sharp, like a man's voice hushed in secrecy. Another voice answered, low and quick. Then the faint metallic scrape of something shifting. I stepped back, bumping into a stone wall. My breath caught, too loud in the still air. The whispers stopped. For a moment, all I could hear was my own heartbeat hammering against my ribs. Then came a thud, a deliberate, heavy sound, as if a weight had shifted within the belly of the horse. Fear gripped me. I turned and ran, stumbling through the streets until I reached my home. My mother stirred as I crawled back to my mat, her voice drowsy. "Little one, where have you been?" I buried my face against her side, trembling. "The horse," I whispered. "There are voices inside it." She laughed softly, pulling the blanket over us both. "Only dreams, child, only dreams." But I knew it was not a dream, and before the night was done, all of Troy would know too. The city quieted as the night deepened. One by one the songs faded, the laughter dimmed, and torches burned low. Only the distant hum of the sea and the rustle of wind remained. But I could not rest. Sleep pulled at me, heavy as stone, yet every time my eyes closed, I heard it again, the creak, the whisper, the thud. My mother's breathing grew steady beside me, calm and trusting. I envied her. Finally, I slipped from the blanket and crept to the door. The streets were no longer alive with celebration. Instead, they were scattered with slumped figures, soldiers snoring on steps, women resting against walls, children curled in corners. The scent of wine still hung in the air, but silence ruled now. And above that silence, faint but sharp, came the sound. Creak. I followed it, heart hammering, until I reached the square once more. The horse stood in shadow, towering above the sleeping city. The moonlight washed its wooden surface pale, making it seem almost like bone. I pressed myself against a wall and listened. Whispers again, this time clearer. A word I did not know. Then the muffled clink of metal, the rasp of steel brushing wood. My stomach turned cold. I crept closer, crouching low, until I was near enough to see a thin line along the horse's belly, a seam I had not noticed before. From it leaked the faintest glimmer of torchlight. Then movement. The seam shifted. Slowly, carefully, a panel of wood began to lift. My breath caught in my throat. A hand emerged, pale in the moonlight, clutching the edge of the opening. Then another, fingers curled, strong and silent, as a man pulled himself into view. I stumbled backward, my heel striking a loose stone. The sound cracked across the square like thunder. The soldier froze, his head turned sharply, eyes gleaming as they scanned the shadows. For a moment, I thought he had seen me. I pressed myself flat against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. My small body trembled, every muscle aching with fear. The soldier listened, the silence stretched, broken only by the soft snores of the city around us. Then, slowly, he slipped back into the shadows of the horse. The panel closed with a faint creak. I ran. My feet slapped against the stones as I darted through alleys, desperate to escape the memory of those eyes searching the dark. I reached my home, my chest burning with terror. I wanted to wake my mother, to scream and shout, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I lay in silence, waiting, because I knew the soldier was still there, and he was not alone. The first streaks of dawn brushed the sky when my eyes opened again. I had not slept, not truly. Instead, I drifted between half-dreams filled with pale hands and wooden seams. My body felt heavy, but my mind was wide awake. The city stirred slowly. Roosters crowed. Merchants yawned as they prepared their stalls. The smell of bread rose from ovens. All seemed as it always had been, and yet everything felt wrong. I walked with my mother to the well. She hummed softly, her eyes still shining with joy from the night before. But I could not hum. My thoughts circled the square like restless birds. When we passed the horse again, my steps faltered. In the daylight it looked harmless, just wood and rope standing silently in the open air. The seams I had seen in the night seemed to vanish in the brightness of morning. For a moment I doubted myself. Perhaps it had only been a dream, some shadow tricking my tired mind. Yet I could not forget the eyes. By mid-morning, the city was alive once more. Children chased each other near the walls. Women carried jars of water, their voices rising in laughter. Old men played at dice, their jokes echoing down the streets. Even the soldiers, weary from celebration, seemed relaxed as they strolled the towers. But beneath it all, my ears strained for the sound I dreaded most. Creak, whisper, thud. It did not come. Not yet. As the sun climbed higher, I felt a strange unease settle in me. It was not the noise I feared now, but the silence, the waiting. The horse stood too still, too patient, like a predator biding its time. I tried to speak to my mother. "Do you think the horse is safe?" I asked, my voice low. She looked at me puzzled. "Safe? Child, it is a gift. Do not let your imagination trouble you." But her words did not ease me. Instead, they made me feel even more alone. By evening, the city returned to feasting. Fires lit the squares, music rose again, and the air filled with the smell of roasted meat. I sat apart, watching the horse in the distance. It loomed dark against the sky, silent and waiting. And then, as night fell once more, I saw it. A flicker of light inside the wooden belly, a faint, shifting glow that should not have been there. This time, I knew I had not imagined it. Something inside the horse was alive. That night, Troy burned with joy once again. Torches blazed in every street, drums pounded in steady rhythm, and voices lifted in song. My people were certain the war was over, that the gods had smiled on them at last. But I could not join their happiness. I sat on the steps of our home, staring across the rooftops at the horse. The flicker of light I had seen still haunted me. It had glowed just long enough for me to doubt my eyes, then vanished as quickly as it came. I told myself to be still, to breathe, to stop imagining things. But as the hours passed, the noise of celebration began to thin. The torches sputtered low, laughter quieted, and one by one the city slipped into sleep. That was when I heard it again. Creak. My stomach tightened. I rose quietly, barefoot once more, and slipped through the empty streets. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the faint smell of ash and wine. When I reached the square, the horse loomed darker than ever, its frame blotting out the stars behind it. I crouched in the shadows, holding my breath, and then I saw it. A seam in the wood shifted, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. The boards creaked apart, no wider than the span of a hand, and through it shone the unmistakable glint of metal. A sword. My heart slammed in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, to wake the city, but my voice caught in my throat. I could only watch, frozen, as a pale face appeared in the crack. A man's face, his eyes searching, his breath fogging the night air. I stumbled backward, my heel striking a loose stone. The sound echoed far too loud in the silence. The man's head jerked toward me. For an instant, his eyes met mine. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned, until the streets blurred around me, until I burst through the door of my home and collapsed on the floor. My mother stirred, murmuring in her sleep, but I did not dare wake her. I pressed myself against the wall, trembling, waiting for footsteps, for shouts, for the crash of soldiers pouring from the horse. But none came. The city slept peacefully, unaware of the danger hiding in plain sight. And I was the only one who knew. Morning light spilled over the walls of Troy, painting the rooftops gold. The streets were slow to wake after another night of revelry. But I had not slept. My eyes were red, my thoughts tangled, and my chest still heavy with the memory of what I'd seen, a face peering from the belly of the horse. I could not keep silent. At the well, as women filled their jars and exchanged laughter, I blurted out, "There are men inside the horse! I saw them!" They paused, surprised, then burst into giggles. One ruffled my hair as if I were speaking nonsense. "Too many stories before bed, little one," she said. Another added, "You dream too much." Their laughter followed me as I fled. Next, I ran to the market square, where soldiers leaned against their spears, weary but at ease. I tugged at the hem of one man's cloak. "Please, you must listen. The horse is not a gift. I saw a soldier inside it." The man frowned down at me, then shook his head. "Go home, child. You've let fear make fools of your eyes." His companions laughed and returned to their dice. Each door I knocked upon, each voice I begged, gave me the same answer: disbelief, amusement, dismissal. I was too young, too small. My warnings could not stand against the joy of victory. By midday, I returned home, defeated. My mother placed a hand on my shoulder, her smile gentle but weary. "Enough, little one. Do not spread fear where none exists." But fear was all I had. As evening fell, the city lit its fires once more. Smoke curled into the darkening sky, carrying with it the sounds of music and celebration. Yet I sat apart, silent, my eyes fixed on the horse. And that was when I noticed something no one else seemed to see. The guards on the wall nearest the horse, two men who had stood tall in the day, now lay slumped at their posts, their torches burning low. At first I thought them asleep, but even from a distance I could see their stillness was too deep. Not sleep. My heart turned cold. The horse loomed above them, silent and waiting, and I knew then that the time of waiting was ending. And when night came again, Troy would no longer be safe. That night, Troy lay blanketed in silence deeper than before. The feasting had grown dull, the songs less spirited. My people were weary from days of celebration, and at last the city seemed ready to rest. Torches flickered along the walls, their light weak against the vast night sky. I did not rest. I crouched near the edge of the square, hidden in the shadow of a column. My eyes never left the horse. Its wooden frame loomed darker than the night around it, and I felt its stillness pressing on me like a weight. Then it began. A soft thud from within, then another. Wood groaned as if straining against its nails. My breath caught. Slowly, the seams I had watched so carefully began to split. A panel of the horse swung outward with agonizing quiet, revealing a darkness that seemed to breathe. And from that hollow belly, a figure slipped out. A man. He landed silently upon the ground, crouching low. The moonlight glinted off the bronze of his helmet. My heart pounded so loudly I feared he might hear it. Then another followed, and another. One by one, like shadows with swords, they emerged from the horse. Their faces were hard, their eyes sharp, their movements precise. These were not spirits of imagination. They were soldiers, Greek soldiers, alive and deadly. I pressed a hand to my mouth to keep from crying out. My small body trembled, every part of me screaming to run, yet my feet refused to move. The men gathered in the square, silent as predators. One raised his hand, and from his lips came a whistle, low, sharp, and deliberate. And then from beyond the city walls another sound answered. The creak of oars, the splash of water. I turned my head toward the sea. Against the horizon, faint but unmistakable, the shadows of ships slid forward, sails dark against the starlit sky. My knees weakened. Everything I had feared, everything I had tried to warn them of, was unfolding before my eyes. The men scattered swiftly, some slipping toward the gates, others vanishing into the shadows of Troy's streets. Their blades glimmered faintly, hungry for the dawn to come. And I knew in that moment the fall of Troy had begun.
I stumbled backward from my hiding place, my heart hammering so loudly I feared the soldiers would hear it echo through the square. But they moved with purpose, too focused on their mission to notice a frightened child cowering in the dark. One group crept toward the gates, carrying tools of iron. Another disappeared into narrow alleys, their armor whispering with each step. The leader, tall and broad-shouldered, raised his hand once more, and the silent army dispersed like wolves loosed upon a sleeping flock. I turned and ran. My feet slapped the stone streets as I raced home. The city around me lay wrapped in dreams, unaware of the danger creeping through its heart. Dogs did not bark, doors did not open. Only my breath and the pounding of my steps broke the silence. I burst through our door, falling against the mat where my mother slept. "Wake up!" I cried, shaking her shoulder. "The horse, it's full of soldiers. They're here." She stirred, blinking at me through the haze of sleep. "Child, hush! It's the middle of the night." "No!" I clutched her arm, desperate. "I saw them come out. They're opening the gates." Something in my voice must have struck her, because she sat up at last. Her eyes searched my face, finding only fear. Yet even then, doubt clouded her. "You dream too much," she whispered. I opened my mouth to argue, but then we both froze. A sound split the night. A long, echoing groan of iron dragged across stone. The gates. We looked at one another, her eyes widening in sudden, terrible understanding. Before either of us could move, the distant clash of metal rang out, followed by the cry of a watchman silenced too quickly. It had begun. My mother pulled me close, her arms trembling. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Don't let go." But the noise outside grew louder, the rush of many feet, the bark of commands in a foreign tongue, the crash of doors splintering. Flames licked the horizon where torches had been set alight. Troy was waking up at last, but not to safety. And as the roar of invading soldiers swelled through the streets,
I realized with a sinking heart that no warning, no cry could save us now. The city I loved was falling, piece by piece, and I was trapped inside it. The streets of Troy erupted in chaos. I clung to my mother's hand as we stumbled into the night, our home already trembling with the clash of iron outside. Shouts rang through the city, some of fear, others of rage, as men scrambled to arm themselves. But the enemy was already here, pouring through the gates like a tide of shadows. We ran. The air thickened with smoke. Flames licked the thatched roofs, sparks raining down like cruel stars. Women cried out, searching for their children. Soldiers shouted commands that were drowned by the scream of splintering wood. Every corner we turned revealed another horror. Doors torn from hinges, streets littered with overturned carts, the once proud city unraveling before our eyes. "Stay close," my mother whispered, her voice fierce despite the tremble in it. She dragged me through narrow alleys, away from the thunder of boots, toward the walls where perhaps, just perhaps, we could escape. But no matter where we turned, the Greeks were already there. Their armor gleamed orange in the firelight, their blades flashing as they drove people back. The sound of Troy's defenders was scattered, broken, too few to turn the tide. My chest burned with the smoke, but I dared not cough. My mother pressed us into the shadows of a crumbling wall as a group of soldiers passed, their voices sharp and foreign. I buried my face against her side, praying they would not see us. When at last they vanished, we crept on. The streets seemed endless now, twisted by fire and fear. Familiar places, where I had once played, where laughter had filled the air, were now unrecognizable, shrouded in ash and flame. And then, as we reached the edge of the square once more, I saw it. The horse. It still stood tall, looming above the burning city like a dark god watching over its own destruction. The sight of it filled me with rage and terror all at once. That hollow beast had birthed this nightmare. I wanted to scream at it, to curse it, but my mother pulled me onward. "Don't look," she said, her voice breaking. We pressed forward, the walls of Troy close now, their stones glowing red from the firelight. If we could just reach them, just find a gate or a breach, perhaps we could escape. But as we turned the final corner, my heart sank. A line of Greek soldiers already stood there, blocking the path, their shadows stretching long against the flames, and they had seen us. The soldiers stepped forward, their armor clinking, their shadows taller than giants in the firelight. My mother pushed me behind her, her arms spread as if she could shield me from the world. For a heartbeat, the street fell still, the burning city groaning around us, the horse looming silent in the square, and the enemy's eyes fixed on us like wolves who had already chosen their prey. But then, a shout rose from deeper within the city. Another cry followed, and the soldiers turned their heads. The noise of battle pulled at them, dragging their attention away. One lowered his spear, as if to end us quickly, but the leader barked a command. With a final glance, they moved on, vanishing into the smoke and fire. We were alone. My mother gripped my shoulders, her breath ragged.
"We must find another way," she whispered. Her face was streaked with soot, her eyes bright with fear, but fierce with love. She would not give up, not yet. We pressed on, slipping through alleys now choked with debris. The roar of the city's fall thundered around us, walls crumbling, voices crying out, the sea wind carrying the clash of oars as more soldiers poured ashore. Troy, once proud and shining, was being pulled apart piece by piece. At last we reached a hidden stair that led up to the battlements. My mother pulled me along, her strength nearly gone, but her will unbroken. From the top, I looked out over the land. What I saw will stay with me forever. The Greek fleet stretched across the horizon, sails like dark wings blotting out the stars. The fields below the city swarmed with soldiers, their torches glowing like a river of fire. And behind us, within the walls, Troy was burning. The city of my birth, the streets of my childhood, the place of songs and laughter and love, it was gone. My mother knelt beside me, her arm pulling me close. "Remember this," she whispered through the smoke. "Remember what you saw, what no one would believe. Remember, and one day tell it true." I pressed my face against her, the tears hot on my cheeks. I was only a child, but I understood. I was now a witness. And so, while Troy burned, I closed my eyes and held her hand. The roar of fire and battle became distant, and I sank into a darkness not of fear, but of weary surrender. The story of the wooden horse, of the night Troy fell, would live on, and it would be told not just by kings or poets, but by the voice of a child who saw it all. And that, my dear friend, is the tale of Troy's fall, told not from the mouths of warriors, but from the eyes of a child who watched his city crumble. May it remind us that even in the grandest stories there are small voices, frightened, tender, yet true, that carry the weight of memory. Now, let your own eyes grow heavy. Leave behind the fires, the shadows, the sorrow of lost walls, and drift instead into the safety of dreams. May your night be calm, your rest deep, and your sleep gentle. Good night.